In an age of steel and stone, when the crown of England was a prize to be won with blood, a white rose and a red rose tore the kingdom apart. This was the War of the Roses, a brutal civil war that pitted brother against brother and house against house. Amidst this chaos, a woman from a modest family, with no royal blood and little political power, would rise to become one of history's most enigmatic queens. Her name was Elizabeth Woodville, and her story is so extraordinary it blurs the line between history and legend. Our story begins not in a grand palace, but on a dusty country road. England is in turmoil. The House of York, led by the charismatic young King Edward IV, has seized the throne from the House of Lancaster. For most, this change of power meant uncertainty and fear. For Elizabeth Woodville, it meant reign, a widow with 2 young sons. Her husband had fought for the losing Lancastrian side. As was the custom, her family's lands and inheritance were confiscated, leaving her and her children destitute. But Elizabeth was not a woman to accept defeat. Hearing that the new King Edward would be passing nearby, she devised a desperate plan. She stood beneath a great oak tree, her 2 sons by her side, and waited. As the royal procession approached, she stepped forward, a lone figure of defiance and grace, to petition the king directly. She wasn't begging for mercy. She was demanding justice. She asked for the return of her son's inheritance. It was a moment that would change the course of English history. King Edward IV, a formidable warrior and a notorious womanizer, was accustomed to women who were either intimidated by his power or eager for his favor. But Elizabeth was different. She was beautiful, yes, but she also possessed a sharp intellect and an unshakable confidence. She met his gaze, not as a subject, but as an equal. The king was utterly captivated. What began as a plea for land turned into something far more profound. He was enthralled not just by her beauty, but by her spirit. The court expected her to become the king's mistress. It was the predictable path for a woman in her position, but Elizabeth refused. She would not be a king's passing fancy. This refusal only deepened Edward's obsession. He offered her wealth, titles, anything she wanted. She wanted only one thing, a wedding ring. And so, in secret, the unthinkable happened. On a quiet May morning in 1464, King Edward IV, the most powerful man in England, married Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, a widow, and the daughter of his enemy. When the news finally broke, it sent shockwaves through the kingdom. The nobility was scandalized. The king was meant to marry a foreign princess, to forge a powerful alliance, not a beautiful widow with no connections. No one was more enraged than the king's most powerful ally, Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, known as the King. Warwick had single-handedly placed Edward on the throne and was already negotiating a royal marriage for him with a French princess. This secret wedding was a personal betrayal and a political disaster. The king had followed his heart, and in doing so had made a dangerous enemy. Almost immediately, the whispers began. How could a woman of such low standing have so completely captured the king? To the superstitious minds of the 15th century, there could be only one explanation: witchcraft. Rumors slithered through the halls of the royal court. They said Elizabeth and her mother, Jacquetta, had used dark magic to ensnare the king. They claimed spells and potions had been brewed charms woven to bewitch Edward and secure Elizabeth's place on the throne. The Woodville family's rapid rise to power only fueled the flames of jealousy. Elizabeth's many siblings were married into the highest noble families. Her father was made an earl, and her brothers were given powerful positions. The old aristocracy watched with bitter resentment as this new family, the upstart Woodvilles, gobbled up titles and influence. The Queen of Sorcery, they called her. But was she a witch, or was she simply a brilliant political strategist? Elizabeth proved to be far more than just a beautiful face. She was a shrewd and intelligent queen who understood the brutal game of thrones she was now forced to play. In a world dominated by men and violence, she used her influence, her charm, and her wits to navigate the treacherous currents of the court. She built a network of loyal supporters and worked tirelessly to protect her family and secure the future of her children. She gave Edward 10 children, including 2 sons, the heirs the kingdom so desperately needed. She was a symbol of Yorkist stability, a graceful and capable queen who stood by her husband's side through rebellion, exile, and renewed war. She had survived the hatred of the kingmaker and cemented her place as Queen of England. For a time, it seemed her incredible gamble had paid off. But the wheel of fortune is always turning. In 1483, at the height of his power, King Edward IV died suddenly, leaving the throne to his 12-year-old son. Edward V, Elizabeth's world shattered once more. Her son was king, but he was just a boy. The kingdom needed a protector, and the man who stepped into that role was the late king's own brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Richard argued that the young king needed to be protected from his ambitious Woodville relatives. He intercepted the young Edward V on his way to London and placed him in the Tower of London, which was then a royal residence as well as a prison. Fearing for her own life and the lives of her other children, Elizabeth fled into sanctuary at Westminster Abbey. Under pressure, she eventually agreed to let her younger son, Richard, join his brother in the Tower. It was a fatal mistake. Shortly after the 2 boys were secured, Richard of Gloucester made a shocking move. He declared Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville invalid, claiming Edward had a prior marriage contract. This made all of their children illegitimate and ineligible for the throne. With the princes out of the way, Richard himself was crowned King Richard III. And then the boys, the princes in the Tower, vanished. They were last seen playing in the gardens of the Tower in the summer of 1483, and then nothing. They were never seen again. The fate of the princes remains one of history's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Did their uncle, Richard III, have them murdered to secure his crown? Were other enemies of the Woodvilles responsible? We will likely never know for sure. For Elizabeth, it was the ultimate tragedy. She had risen from nothing, fought against the most powerful men in the kingdom, and won the ultimate prize, only to lose everything in the most devastating way imaginable. Her reign, which began like a fairy tale, ended in a mother's worst nightmare. Elizabeth Woodville lived to see the end of the War of the Roses and the rise of a new dynasty, the Tudors, when her own daughter married King Henry VII, uniting the houses of York and Lancaster. At last, the White Rose and the Red Rose were finally joined. So who was she? A cunning sorceress who bewitched a king, a ruthless political operator who used her beauty as a weapon, Or was she simply a devoted wife and mother, a survivor who played the hand she was dealt with extraordinary courage and intelligence? Her rise was so improbable, so staggering, that her contemporaries could only explain it as magic. Perhaps the truth is that her greatest magic was her own resilience, her refusal to be broken by a world that tried everything to crush her. The story of the White Queen is a testament to the power of a single individual to defy fate and carve her name into the pages of history, forever shrouded in beauty, tragedy, and mystery. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from history.